Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show. Hello.
Good day.
Good afternoon.
Good grief.
Good morning. Oh, I like that one.
Good gravy.
It certainly is on a roast dinner. Love a good bit of gravy.
Good fellow.
Lock the door and...
Loch Ness.
Hey, there we go. There we go. We got there in the end.
That's, for those of you who've never heard this podcast before, that is the stupid way we begin this podcast with some weird
The traditional
game.
method, isn't it? It's a tried and tested way of beginning the podcast.
This is the Benji and Nick show, isn't it? Yeah.
But like you say, if you've not tuned in before, and for some reason you're listening to this, what do we do, Nick?
Well, we talk about cult television, old television. We talk about some, modern television. I nearly said grown-up television. Modern television as well. But our podcasts follow the format of we've watched something. Get it right, Briggs. We've watched something the week before, and then we talk about it the next week. Or we read out your emails and talk about the latest TV we've been watching. Or we do a commentary of something, but only Death to the Daleks from Doctor Who.
Just on repeat.
And I'm not Benji.
And I'm not Nick, no, but we are Benji and Nick, both of us, and this is what we do. So, I'm just going to go around in circles here.
And I'd just like to say that the person who does our cover designs, for the artwork for the podcast, Colin Smith.
Talented man.
He gave me those... Good day Loch Ness tips. He gave me good grief, good gravy, and good fellow. So I was technically cheating.
I'm so glad that you feel the need to admit that, because if you were exposed,
so you've won. I've been disqualified.
You've been disqualified. Well, there could have been a scandal. It could have really led to a scandal. Couldn't it? Things could have been completely out of control. I would have had to have taken you to a tribunal. And
yeah, but I would have won.
But you would have won. It would have been in your favour. So this week we're talking about something which you hold very close to your heart, don't you?
Yes.
Revenge of the Cybermen.
Yeah, 1975 Doctor Who story in Tom Baker's first year as the Doctor.
Certainly is. So we'll get round to that in a bit. Have we got any emails first?
I'm going to do that next time. But if you want to send in an email, send it to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. Please do.
Get it over. We'd like to hear from you.
And yes, and in the next podcast, we will be reading out your emails and having a chat with you at quite a distance. Another thing we do in the podcast is we phone the son of Jerry Anderson. We would phone Jerry Anderson, but unfortunately he's dead. So we go for the next best thing, which is his son.
Yeah.
His son, Jamie.
Sometimes if you close your eyes, you could almost believe you were talking to him. Absolutely.
Not really, no. I don't think he's anything like his dad, actually.
No, I don't think so. But again, if you've not met his dad, then I suppose you've got nothing to gauge it on, have you?
No grounds for making an informed judgment at all.
Yeah. Well, I must tell everybody something. This is not to do with cult telly, but it is to do with old-fashioned things.
Oh,
and I thought, this will be interesting banter to tell the listeners. So I got a electricity smart meter installed in the house, to which I've become obsessed with electricity. And
shocking,
because it's shocking, absolutely
positively shocking.
And I'm just, you notice very quickly all the things that use up an awful lot of electricity, and one of them being a kettle. And so I saw that the electric kettle, given the fact that being somebody that works from home all the time, I make an awful lot of tea, and it's costing an awful lot of money, because it takes it up from currently averaging on 5p per hour.
Yeah.
And then when you use the kettle, it will take your electricity up to 48p per hour.
Now, that's a real surge of energy there.
It's a huge surge. Now, granted, you don't use it for a whole hour, but say you make 3 cups of tea.
If you boil the kettle once, that makes it 48p an hour, does it?
I don't know. I don't quite know.
Only 48p an hour if you boil a kettle for an entire hour. In which case, that's not shocking at all.
In which case, that's not shocking at all. But anyway, I don't know. But I just thought, we make a lot of tea in this house. I thought this is just using up a lot of electricity, and it's also connected to the gas. And so we did an experiment of putting the gas on to see how that would affect things. And it pretty much didn't make any difference at all. So, gone is the electric kettle, and in its place is a whistling old kettle, and it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Wow, it makes
just
no
as
difference.
Good. Makes pretty much no difference. There's a little bit of electricity that's been saved, very much more energy efficient, sounds better and looks better. What more do you want? And it'll probably last longer as well. It's got a 25-year warranty on it as well.
I just want to drill into the detail here. When you got the reading of 48 pence, was that when you'd bored the kettle once?
When the kettle is on, it brings up the thing to 48p. Whether or not it means that, I don't know whether it means that's going to cost X for this. But it
shows that on average.
But on average,
the meter shows that if you continue using electricity like this is what it's going to cost you for an hour's worth. And the gas thing does the same thing, does it?
Yeah, it's all linked to the same thing. So you can
turn the gas on and it shows you the impact that would have if that was maintained for an hour.
Correct, as it's wired completely into the meters.
Well, so the comparison is good then.
So I reckon on average, given the fact that there's 4 people in this house all working from home, I think that's a lot of tea, boy. You know, I drink an awful amount of tea. I'm always drinking tea. That's when I work. I do a scene, have a cup of tea, and that's kind of how I do things. And so
that's why you look like a teacup.
That's why I look like a teacup. That's why there's a big hole in my head and it all sloshes around. But anyway, so
there's a big handle on your back.
There's a big, and I always have to tilt myself.
That's a teapot.
That is a teapot. You know, that's, I suppose. Yeah, a big gravy dish.
Listen, folks. I wish you could enjoy the sight of Benji trying to approximate a teacup. I just leave it to your imaginations. But it's quite. I don't know if we ever do a live show, that will be one of the major features.
A feature, yeah. Well, we did. Have that one, didn't we? Where on Twitter, where we put that up as to whether people would like a live show, because a video popped up of us doing those Dalek voices in the hotel at the Capitol.
Did it?
Yeah, it's up on there. Yeah. So
is it on our feed?
It's not on our feed. No, I wasn't sure. The picture that I uploaded of us when asking the question was from it, but not the video. I can put it on the feed.
Yeah, you should.
Let's have a look.
I want to see that.
Yeah,
we want to see that. I do.
I want to see that. It's quite fun. I thought it's quite a good video. And funny enough, it felt a lot longer, but it actually only lasted for about 5 minutes.
God, I would hope it was shorter than that.
Talk for a Dalek.
It was only 5 hours.
Talk Like a Dalek with Nicholas Briggs and Benji Clifford lasted for 5 minutes and 40 seconds.
Right. Have you put it on our Twitter?
I'll upload it
Benji
now.
and Nick. The Benji and Nick show on Twitter,
which you can sign up. We occasionally post bits of banter on there for you all to enjoy.
There's currently a picture of you and me and the Loch Ness Monster doing our Loch Ness game.
Well, it wasn't that brilliant. I thought that was a great photo there. Nick, do Dalek.
The thing about the Loch Ness game, if anyone's still concerned about that, is that whoever says Loch Ness gets to say Loch Ness first is the winner.
There you go. It's up now. Yeah, I don't quite know. There's no prize. It's just a peace of mind, isn't it? Really, you know, if you get the Loch Ness, you can continue your week and think, excellent. Maybe you can. I'd love to hear some audio recordings of our listeners playing Loch Ness with each other. That could be fun.
Send those in to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. We'd like to hear some Loch Ness games.
Oh, yeah. I think that could
have you put it up yet?
It's up.
Well, it's not on our home page.
It's on the Twitter, not the Facebook.
I'm looking at. It's just arrived. Hold on, let's have a look. So no one can hear this. It's just me giggling at it. It's good.
It's quite good, isn't it?
I might put a clip of that in.
Good old giggle.
It's just us standing there going, I do not know.
It said, we have to count how many times it's said throughout. It's said an awful lot.
Well, it became our our catchphrase for that panel at Doctor Who convention. I do not know. Talk like a Dalek with Nick and Benji. Yes.
Which lasted 5 minutes until the people of the hotel decided we were keeping them up. Class.
Yes.
Absolute class.
It was too noisy. Who knew that screaming like a mad killing machine
at 10:30 in the evening? Yeah.
Was it 10:30? Yeah. People have gone to bed. I love your. You've done that a GIF of the Cybermen in Revenge of the Cybermen massaging.
It does look like it, doesn't
grabbing
it?
the Doctor, yeah.
It
Doctor
does look like it. You see,
fancy a massage, which brings us neatly, does it not,
to the task at hand.
Dan, 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 dan. Ding, 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 ding. So we're not actually going to talk about it. We're just going to
We're going to do an entire suite of the music.
By Kerry Blyton, fantastic composer. Very controversial. This story is very controversial. Just like Death to the Daleks.
It's another one, isn't it? It really is the Marmite of Doctor Who stories for Doctor Who fans.
Well, I had that same experience when I first started meeting other Doctor Who fans, en masse, as it were. I discovered that this was like, everyone thought it was a real turkey. And I thought, what? That's like my second favourite story. Because, of course, I'd recorded it and listened to it over and over again on audio.
I think it's all about what you watch and the memories that they leave you with and the fondness. Yep. You know, and that's how I've always kind of stuck up Death to the Daleks and said, well, I love it because I've always loved it. For me, the idea of not loving it is strange, but does exist. But it's, you know, it's like there are probably some people out there that think that the Twin Dilemma is incredible. But I
bet they do.
But I've not met them.
I bet they do. Is Colin Baker one of them? No.
I think Colin liked it. I think he liked it, didn't he?
I don't know whether he did like it. I think he sort of acknowledges
its
it wasn't
existence.
Maybe his best. It was only John Nathan Turner who, in order to sort of quell the criticism, kept saying it's my personal favourite. like him saying it was his favourite would stop people from hating it.
Oh dear.
Anyway.
Oh dear.
Revenge of the Cybermen. Like Death to the Daleks, it was released very early on BBC Video, wasn't it?
Certainly was, yeah. It was one of the early ones. If not the first one, was it not?
Really?
I'm going to look at... I'm like 90% sure it was the first one, actually.
I suppose it must have been that it was... It must have been the duration and the fact that the Cybermen were in it and that it was in colour. That created the perfect storm for the reason to release it.
With Tom Baker as well as
Tom
the
Baker.
Doctor. Released on VHS, Betamax and Laserdisc.
Yeah.
So you got the full range
I know
there.
Someone who's got the Laserdisc of it. Yeah.
I'd love to see it, you know, because they're massive things, aren't they? Laserdisc.
Well, the size of a record, aren't they?
Yeah, it'd be a good little cover. But good big cover. But it's, you know, looking back on it and having watched it back, for me. I love it, but at the same time, I can acknowledge that it has quite a few faults. The Vogons being essentially one of the big ones.
Well, listen, I take a moment for people. If you're listening to this and you've never seen Doctor Who: Revenge of the Cybermen, I should tell you, it was the final story in Tom Baker's first year, and it was the end of a sort of story arc, if you pardon the pun, where the Doctor in his second story had landed on Space Station Nerva, and then he teleported down to Earth at a time when the Earth had been purified by solar flares. But when he tried to teleport back to Space Station Nerva at the end of a story called The Sontaran Experiment, the Time Lords intercepted him and dragged him to Skaro, the planet of the Daleks, to avert the creation of the Daleks in a story called Genesis of the Daleks. And then at the end of Genesis of the Daleks, having sort of completed their mission, they delayed the development of the Daleks by entombing them in their bunker. The Doctor, Sarah and Harry took the time ring that the Time Lord had given them at the beginning of the story to whoosh off back to space station Nerva to find the TARDIS and go on their merry way. But unfortunately, something weird happens, and they end up on space station Nerva when it was called Nerva Beacon, thousands of years before they'd got there before. So the TARDIS isn't there, and they get involved in a story in which the crew of Nerva Beacon are virtually all dead because of a space plague, apparently. But no, the Cybermen are up to something, because there's a planet of gold called Voga that's come in to Earth's solar system, and the Cybermen fear it because it's made of gold, and we learn in this story that Cybermen can be killed by gold. And it had a very difficult scripting stage, didn't it? Because one of the original co-creators of the Cybermen, Jerry Davis, wrote the original script, but he wrote it pretty much like it was a Patrick Troughton story from that era, sort of a much more childlike version of Doctor Who. And so the then current script editor of Doctor Who, Robert Holmes, kind of took it and more or less he took a few elements from it and rewrote it from the ground up, didn't he? Does that sum it all up?
I was going to say I was thoroughly enjoying listening to that. That was like an audiobook within itself. It was really good, really good. I think that sums it up rather nicely.
And that's the end of the podcast.
And that's it. Goodbye. It's I think the first thing is, it takes place in that great time, possibly my favourite season of Doctor Who, actually, which Tom Baker's first season of Doctor Who, season 12, and the reason I would say it is my favourite is because it's just hit after hit after hit. It all works so wonderfully together. You can watch that and just feel satisfied. Now, this story in particular, I would say, it stands out compared to the others as not quite as strong in terms of what they were doing at the time. But I don't think it's a bad story.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I just.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, because it's got all the elements. I think I find it a bit dry at times. But it's not. But I don't dislike it because it's dry. But it is a bit dry.
Do you mean not much happening? Not
very
atmospheric?
There's a lot of kind of talking and moving around and making use of the same set. There is a bit of that.
That never happens in a Doctor Who story. What do you mean?
But having said that, the things I love about it is, and I think I might have said this on a previous podcast, I absolutely love the Nerva Beacon stuff. I love it. It's such a believable. It's one of the first times you see this space station in Doctor Who that I really believe it, and it feels like a working environment. And
don't look too closely at the gantry area, the transom area, where you look through into space and you can just see the floor of the studio with a wire going along that powers the lights dangling there, which is meant to be the stars, which also sort of waft around slightly when the actors move. It was only this time watching it again that I noticed that, and a little part of my heart snapped and broke off.
It's all right. Watch it for the CGI version, where I'm sure they haven't fixed it.
They might have said. Do you know? I think your assessment is pretty accurate and fair, mate. But I have to say, from an emotional point of view of my recollections of my reaction at the time, for me, this was the best story of the season. Isn't that weird? I just wasn't buying Robot. I thought Ark in Space was boring. Sontaran Experiment I liked because it was on location, but not much happened. Genesis of the Daleks drove me bonkers because when I finished tape recording it, I counted up the minutes of the Dalek scenes. It was a 6 times 25-minute story, and there were only 20 minutes of Daleks in the entire story.
It is a very Dalek-like Dalek story,
which really upset me. Now, of course, I was like 13. I now, I suppose, recognise that really, in so many ways, most of the ways you've pointed out, Revenge of the Cybermen is the weakest story of the season. But to me, it was because it was like a Patrick Troughton story, and that was my that touched my fundamental love of Doctor Who. It really had that feel about it. Even though, of course, it's got so many terrible things in it. The Cybermen costumes are pretty rubbish.
I love them though. I quite like them. I was actually, one thing I would say is I thought that they were really quite good. I think they were my favourite Cyberman design will be the tomb ones. It always has been, and it always will be. I love those, and probably because I think they were the first Cybermen I saw, perhaps.
Oh, right.
And so that will always stick with me. But when you look at how ghastly they looked in The Weird in Space and The Invasion, my opinion.
I love the Invasion ones.
Oh, those dreadful suits, though. Diving suits. It looks
that.
I love the masks, but the suits.
I know, but I love the suits. I love that sort of, yeah. It kept the heads in place, because Revenge of the Cybermen, the heads wobble all over the place. Every time they move around, they kind of look like they're going... Certainly subordinate Cybermen. I think Christopher Robbie, who played the Cyber Leader... I think it was the first time we had an on-screen credited cyber leader, didn't we? I think they're mentioned in
cyber leader, definitely, as opposed to the controller being the previous thing. But this is the leader.
Leader. The beacon is ours.
But getting to Christopher Robbie, this was the problem. I cannot tell you. I would love to have some, secret found footage of my face as a teenager when Christopher Robbie. It was really, the beacon is ours. I couldn't really tell what his accent was at that point. But in the next bit, when he said, "This is the main shaft," I thought, "What? What are you doing? What?" I mean, apart from the fact that it just wasn't like any Cyberman voice I'd heard before. It was just as a man in a mask, and I could hear his voice muffled behind the mask, and that's all you're getting, isn't it? And they put a tiny bit of ring modulation on it, don't they? So it's just like... They must have looked up the effect somewhere, and it's the same touch of ring modulation you have on the 10th Planet Cybermen. When they're speaking like this, there's a... It's
that weird back sort of slightly... Yeah, it's very subtle, isn't it?
Yes, and in and of itself, it's nothing really impressive, and so especially when people are just talking like this. But of course, that kind of delivery is what gave birth to later on the 1980s Cybermen. I mean, David Banks was very much continuing, in a better way, I would say, to give David his credit, continuing the tradition of Christopher Robbie, wasn't he? Very much so. It was kind of, that was the established... I think the thing that we have to, I suppose, think is that, like you say, the original concept of the Cybermen back in 10th Planet is that sort of, they were once human beings like us, but were modified gradually. With Patrick Troughton's Times of Doctor, obviously they became a little bit more robotic. They still had aspects of that, like obviously Tomb of the Cybermen was hugely about conversion and that. But I think it does now. When you look back at the Doctor Who legacy in the classic series, this version of the way that they speak is the way that it's kind of more often than not done, isn't it? This is how they are portrayed. Well, certainly in the 80s they carried on like this, yeah. 70s, 80s, 10th Planets. It's only really before the Troughton stuff, really, where they're very robotic. Yes, I suppose so. I mean, I'm not quite sure what we did on the new series, with the Age of Steel and all that, and then the later ones they've done in the new series, which the effect is so deep that no kind of expression is possible, really. They were different type though, because they were very bulkier. They were less like these Cybermen, which are wearing a very thin fabric sort of suits with a chest unit. The new series, they're kind of big, absolute metal. Well, that's the funny thing you say that. They're much smaller than new series ones, but the way they shoot them, I know they're small because I've stood next to them. They're tiny, they're very petite, but they shoot them to look big, whereas these guys were big guys. Christopher Robbie was a very tall actor, and he had huge amounts of fuzzy hair, which probably is what keeps his helmet on straight. In place. Christopher Robbie was known to me as a Southern TV continuity, in-vision continuity announcer. He's got that voice, hasn't he? He does just that's. Yes, it's like if you had Patrick Allen as the Cyberman, it would always sound like Barrett Holmes. It would. And there's funnily enough, there's another guy who's been in Doctor Who, and he was in a Cyberman story, Clifford Earle. Oh yeah, and he was a Southern Television in-vision continuity announcer, except he had a funny thing that when he spoke and got nervous, I'm doing it for you now, his arm just wiggled around, and so me and my mates at school, he said, Clifford, look, his arm's going again, his arm, look at it.
Something's happening.
He had no idea he was doing it, bless him. But yes, he's one of the RAF personnel, isn't he, or something? In the missile base in The Invasion, the previous Cybermen story.
I don't know what that was.
Also,
the two things about
Kevin
the Cybermen...
Stoney is in The Invasion, and in this as well. There's a link with The Invasion.
So obviously, Mr. Cyber guy, they thought, bring him back in. He knows what it's about.
This one, he just does a silly voice, doesn't he, inside the
yes,
mask?
believe. So, yes.
I can intellectually understand that the Vogan masks are terrible.
Yes.
But I can't emotionally understand that. To me, they totally convince me. I can't see an actor there, because when I first saw them, I just accepted them for what they were. Even though I can see the gap around the mouths and the eyes, and it's ludicrous, really, but... No, they look like something out of Stingray. Stingray.
They've got very pronounced features, haven't they? And I think that they look awful, but they don't look like something I wouldn't believe was out there in an alien world.
Oh, interesting. Imagine meeting an alien going, "That's a mask, isn't it?
Come on, governor." But it's only like
I do not know what you mean.
It's only like the Draconians of the Pertwee's time.
The Draconian ones were latex. These look like hard,
plastic, essentially.
Yeah,
fused.
I think the Draconians were much more acceptable than these. I don't know. I think it's an interesting point that Philip Hinchcliffe made, the producer of the time, in an interview when on the extras in the DVD edition. He talks about how, because the actors, he might have been talking about the android invasion and Stigron and that, he said, but because the actors' facial features are so limited and expressions are so limited in masks like this, they all start acting in that very Shakespearean way. Summon him here. Yes, immediately, Varus. Everything is very overpronounced. And that was, of course, Michael Wisher, Davros.
The king
He'd
himself.
been in the previous story, and here he was, turning up again, although they filmed it before Genesis, I think. And I remember Michael talking about how he decided that his character had a handkerchief because he'd been down the mines on Voga and had got emphysema or something. I don't know. What about other members of the cast? So, look, we've talked about Kevin Stoney. I mentioned Michael Wisher there. Ronald Lee Hunt.
Who's Commander Stevenson. Yes, who I think he's quite good. He's quite, I think he sells it. I think he looks at, or seems slightly too old to be doing the post that he's doing, but perhaps I'm just ageist. But I think he's quite good.
Yeah, I would have known him from not just the Seeds of Death, where he's with the Ice Warriors. Yeah,
yes, of course, yeah.
Wearing ridiculous trousers and things in that.
Yes, with a great moustache, I seem to recall.
I don't think so.
Oh, no.
I don't think his trousers had a moustache.
No, he didn't have a moustache, but I think it's the...
He's sort of, there's something quite Nick Courtney-like about Ronald Lee Hunt. They're sort of cut from the same cloth, aren't they? They've got that sort of...
They certainly are. No, I know exactly what you mean.
I knew from Freewheelers. He was Colonel Buchan in Freewheelers.
Freewheelers, yes. Which we need to cover, actually.
We absolutely do. With a heavy blanket. No, we do need to cover it, absolutely. I remember I've spoken to Wendy Padbury about Freewheelers and how they had her just making the coffee or doing the dinner or the washing up all the time, and she's meant to be, in there with action with the boys. That was a sort of kids drama made by Southern Television. So Ronald Lee Hunt had that pedigree. I'm sure that Freewheelers hadn't long finished when Revenge of the Cybermen was
finished.
Look it up. And then there was another chap who plays Ronald Lee Hunt's sidekick, who ended up
William Marlowe as Lester, who looks like Tony Blackburn. Oh, you're talking about Freewheelers. Sorry, I thought you meant in this.
No, I was talking about in this.
Yeah, doesn't he look like Tony Blackburn?
I never thought of that. I don't think he's got much more pockmarked skin than Tony Blackburn has, but Tony Blackburn hasn't. But he became famous later in a series called The Gentle Touch, which was about a female police officer played by Jill Gascoigne, was it? Yeah, it's been shown on Talking Pictures TV recently, and she was like my dad's favourite. And he played her boss. So he became quite, And looking back at it, actually, what was the guy's name again? I've forgotten already.
William Marlowe.
William Marlowe. Yeah, well, Bill Marlowe. Looking back at it in this recent reviewing, I feel that he's a bit too cool for school in this. I think he thinks this job is below him.
Do you know what? I completely agree with you. He is far too cool in it.
He's not fully engaged, is he? I think he thinks it's a bit rubbish. Take it seriously.
Yeah. Like, you know, not only are you on the Beacon, which is plagued by plague, but also you've got the Cybermen attacking you, and all this is going on whilst you've got the Voga stuff going on as well. It's like there's a lot to be pretty uptight about, but he's quite sort of blasé about it all, isn't he?
He's got a sneer on his face, hasn't he? Like, and he's not meant to be an unpleasant character, but it's almost like you could think he was the villain.
Well, talking of the villain, though, I mean, you've got
Kelman,
who is the most, like, you only have to look at him to think, well, he's obviously the villain, isn't he? He looks like he looks like a sort of Nazi, doesn't he? In a way, the way he does though in this.
It's the blonde hair,
and the sort of uniform, and he looks like he should be on a U-boat or something.
What's the actor's name? Jeremy Wilkin.
Jeremy Wilkin.
Wilkin, yeah. He was Virgil in Thunderbirds, you know.
He was, yes. No, you're completely correct. He was in Captain Scarlet as well, wasn't he?
Probably. I think
so. I think he did a lot of them. I want to say that he's been in, like, not just Thunderbirds, but quite a few of the different bits and bobs.
I think he's brilliant in this, actually. He's a very, very compelling character.
He is very he plays it very well.
He needn't be. I mean, he's a traitor, and yet he's very watchable.
I'm not a traitor. I'm merely an exographer. That is a tool for exography. I am an exographer. He is great. Has
the word exographer ever been used in anything else ever again?
Well, I've just looked it up. Exography was the practice of surveying planets. Professor Kelman was an exographer. He studied Jupiter, and in particular its moon, Voga. And that is all. It's never mentioned again.
No, that's it. Exographer.
Well, that's your task. Fit it into one of your scripts, Nick. I'm an exographer.
It's going in right now.
I'm a xylophone.
I'm writing a script called Exographers of Doom.
Yes, we've assessed all the planets. And
I think an exographer is someone who used to be an ographer.
Maybe.
They're now an exographer.
Now they're an exographer. Perhaps that's the thing. Like, perhaps you practice, you learn the craft through ography.
Yes.
And then once you graduate, you become an exographer. Perhaps that's the answer here.
I tried ography, but it just wasn't for me, so I'm an exographer.
Oh, me too. I'm also a villain that looks like I should be shooting torpedoes out of my boat.
I love the fact that he says, when the Doctor picks up his device and says, I think this is for controlling, keeps in touch with his masters, he says, and he says, and it's for analysing minerals.
Yeah.
And it's obviously a remote control unit for a Cyberman. I mean, it looks like a model airplane remote control unit. Yeah,
I think it's very sharp. I like it though. I like the way it opens up, and he's got all his, and he's got all his gear in his room.
Oh, yes. Well, as we've mentioned in previous podcasts, he's got gear including the spy hairbrush from Live and Let Die.
He certainly has, yeah.
It is. It's that prop that they bought in. And there's that silly moment where Tom Baker opens it when he's rifling through his drawers. And for a moment, he goes to brush his hair with it and then stops and thinks like we're going to have a scene of the Doctor just brushing his hair.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if there's anybody who I would like to see brushing their hair, Tom Baker has good hair to be brushed.
That's
but
true.
you know,
Still has.
it's like this thing about props being brought in though. Did you see the one? I think I mentioned it the other day in Planet of the Daleks in their control room. The Daleks control unit there is the same control units that was used in Diamonds Are Forever, in the scene where they put Bond inside the coffin and try to flay him alive. And it's the exact same thing, and all they've done, I think it still has some of the stupid. It got used for something else, so it definitely has the word sauna on it, and it's definitely in the Dalek control room, and
it says sauna.
And it's still, I think it still says sauna. Yeah, it's quite amusing.
Activate the sauna. Oh, that's nice. My back.
But there was a lot of prop things being recycled, as we spoke about Death to the Daleks with the gun, which somehow I think made its way to Star Wars for the Sands people,
weird,
and things like that. It? So it's but I mean, this is a very, quite a prop centric story with all the Nerva beacon stuff. Like I was saying earlier, like it feels very robust. There's lots of sort of control units and funky diagrams on the wall and the doors, and it feels very compelling and real.
And talking generally of the prop and design element, of course, they've got a lot to do here, because they've got essentially two radically different settings, haven't they? They have the beacon, which is all high tech and human space exploration, and then they've got Voga, which is sort of ancient underground civilization, which of course Roger Murray Leach, who I believe is the designer of this story, is that right? He invented a logo for the Vogans, which he then reused when he designed for the Deadly Assassin, and it became the Time Lord logo.
And it's now, and very much though, still used as the Time Lord logo.
Absolutely,
isn't it?
People latched onto it because Roger Murray Leach is a fantastic designer, but it's interesting he used it in this minor role before. I'm sure I read once some attempts in Doctor Who magazine to sort of work out why the Vogans had the same logo as the Time Lords.
I think it could be you could easily do it. You
could easily get Matt Fitton to write a huge 6-part story about it.
About how they become, I don't know. I don't even know. It could work though.
I was joking.
Yeah, but the irony is somebody could easily do it. That is the irony.
They could just accidentally. Oh my goodness! I've just written a story all about the Time Lord logo.
Look,
hold on, no one's interested.
Hold on, it's bored us all to death again. It is great though.
Boredom of the Time Lords.
Boredom. We could set it on Voga. It'd be even more boring.
Well, I'd love to do the Vogans again. Perhaps I should do Return to Voga.
It was good. It sounds good, doesn't it? Let's be honest. I love their little boats that they have.
Oh yeah, that Liz Sladen, she nearly drowned when she fell off one.
Well, to be fair, if there's any way you're going to drown in a cave full of water, it's probably quite a good place to do it, isn't it?
Horrific.
It's, dark, nasty.
Talking of Liz Sladen, first of all, I want to talk about the regulars. Tom Baker is, the thing about this series is, the whole of this season, is that Tom Baker didn't know he was a legend at this point. He was already, as it were. I know you have to be dead to be a legend, but you know what I mean. But John Pertwee was Doctor Who while he was filming this. The public didn't know him at all, and it's really interesting that he did that sort of Southwest TV interview on the location for Revenge of the Cybermen, which was the cave system at Wookey Hole. And he had no idea of the coming notoriety. He might have had an inkling, but he did not know that he was going to become perhaps the most famous Doctor of them all.
I think it also shows in his performance as well.
Yes.
As the Doctor. Partly why I like, strangely enough, actually, I love his first and his last seasons as Doctor Who, but mainly because they feel very different from the sort of stereotypical Fourth Doctor sort of thing. Like what I really love about season 12 is the ability. He feels very much like a sort of lost wandering traveller. He's kind of making it, improvising it and making it up as he goes along, and I feel that especially like in
and
stories.
That's very much Tom, what he was doing. He was feeling his way in the part.
But that's actually a very good way of looking at it, actually.
He's not so it's when he becomes certain of himself later that the character becomes a bit overbearing, and
Destiny of the Daleks. I mean, that is a very overbearing sort of take on it all, isn't it? It's far more silly.
Let's bring in the other main characters of Sarah and Harry, who I think that when the three of them are sort of footling around in episode 1, trying to find out, where the TARDIS is and all that. I think all that stuff's lovely, and the getting through the door and the Doctor giving
I love that. The getting through
Harry
the door
a black
bit, I
look,
adore.
It's great.
I love it as well. I think, as we've said before anyway, Liz is just... She is the Doctor Who companion. She's just fantastic. She always gives it her all. She showcases terror such a wonderful way. But the way in which she works with Ian Marter, Harry, the way that they work together in this, and as well, like the same sort of thing in the Sontaran experiment, which is why I loved it. Not so much in Genesis, but the way in which they interact with each other. Yes. I particularly love because they're a team, but they've both got their own kind of way of getting through it. Harry's there, hello old girl, and he's sort of a bit of gold and being a bit sort of flippant himself actually throughout, and her taking it very seriously but not putting up with any rubbish and making you a joke.
I think
work
Harry's
very well.
Very earnest. That's what I love about it. And I think the two of them work together brilliantly. I think they're both thunderingly good actors.
Definitely.
And I'm desperately sad that neither of them are with us anymore.
Oh, me too.
I met Ian. I spent some time with Ian, and he was a lovely, fiercely intelligent, interesting man, and a very talented actor. He was brilliant in the role, I thought. And the two of them worked together, and they had virtually no material to work with, but they made those truncated little scenes, trivial scenes, into something just rather delightful to watch.
Definitely. It's fun, and you do believe that these two people travel around with each other. You believe that they know each other enough to have a bit of a joke with each other, but they do fiercely care for each other as well. And
I love that bit when they beam down to the planet to rid Sarah of the venom, and she suddenly realises she's being carried by Harry. That's the same as harried. And she goes, hey, what's going on?
I love it,
because he's got his hands all over her. I also like that. Just reminds me of the real there. If you watch that season and watch the way Ian Marter cares for Liz Sladen, there's that lovely bit in Ark in Space where they put her, when she's unconscious or semi-conscious, and they put her on the bed that ends up being a teleporter. There's a danger that you might see up poor Liz's skirt, but Ian has his hand firmly gripping the hem, and he tries to disguise. He says, all right, I'll go, and he leans forward, and as he leans forward, he pulls the hem of her skirt down, which is obviously to reassure Liz, don't worry, your skirt hasn't come up, we're not, because when they shoot a scene continuously like that, there's not much chance for an edit. And I think they're probably both aware that if you accidentally flash a little bit more of your body than you really want to, it's probably just, unless it's downright obscene, it's probably going to be left in. And I can imagine
have a bit of a Day of the Daleks sort of scenario.
What happened there?
Well, that is Katie Manning completely shows it. Her skirt goes completely up right in front of the camera. Yes, right in front of the camera. Right in front.
Me.
Yeah.
And they kept it in.
Absolutely kept it in. Yeah.
Was that on a filmed sequence though?
Yeah, it was in studio when she's sitting with the controller, and then something happens. Somebody's at the door, and they get up really quickly.
Good Lord.
Yeah, good Lord.
I won't say anything as awful as I must go back and look at that, because that just sounds weird, frankly. I'm sorry. I won't ever look at that story again. Yeah, so, I mean, and you can see that I remember when I watched this again, Revenge of the Cybermen, I remember thinking there were a couple of bits where he did similar things with Liz, where he looked after her, where he made sure she was all right. Where they'd obviously spoken about it and thought, where she'd said, can you just make sure, of course I can, old thing.
But that comes across as well with characters, though, as well.
Yeah.
That level of trust with each other
They
really
are my
works.
favourite team. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, I would always say that one of the biggest sort of crimes in Doctor Who is that we didn't have more of Harry Sullivan.
Yeah.
Because I loved Harry. Because actually, and it's something they never quite did that I always felt they should have done, but he seems like this sort of quite an ordinary sort of bloke. He seems like the type of chap where, especially at that time in the 70s, you could go down the pub for a drink with him and have a perfectly nice time, and he's suddenly thrust into this sort of situation and just gets on with it, and I like that. But
he's also he's a trained and skilled. He's a trained, military man, and he's a skilled surgeon lieutenant. So I mean, he is. They didn't. You can see in the interview with Philip Hinchcliffe in the Android Invasion DVD release that they sort of put it to him that he got rid of Harry Sullivan in a rather perfunctory manner, and you can see that is probably the first time that Philip Hinchcliffe has ever thought about it, because I think that they put Harry Sullivan in as a male action-packed character because they did not know what the new Doctor was going to be like, and at one point he was going to be an older man and they needed someone younger to handle the action, apparently, and that's what he was there for. And I think, this is just an inference and I could be completely wrong, so apologies for offending anyone, that he was completely superfluous to Philip Hinchcliffe's master plan. And I think that Philip, from the moment he saw Harry in there, just thought, I don't need this guy, I don't want this character. And I think that the characters served quite poorly throughout, except for Ark in Space, where Robert Holmes takes the time to make the first 2 episodes almost entirely about Harry, certainly the first episode. But after that, he doesn't get served very well. And I think that, I think when Philip Hinchcliffe got rid of him, he just thought, yeah, whatever, gone, and I think that's underlined by the fact that when he's asked about it, you can see him thinking, oh yeah, we didn't really, oh yeah, just wanted it. It wasn't his creation, so he wasn't interested in doing anything with him, I think.
And he had, I think as well, he had his own very specific view upon what Doctor Who is. It's the way that he went about Doctor Who is quite different, I think, to the norm. And so, I think definitely would have thought, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it, we don't need him, see you later, let's crack on, time's short.
The funny thing is, though, of course, even though one would have imagined that that's what Tom might have thought, and perhaps he would have thought that later in his time, because he started talking about how he didn't need a companion, or he could just have a giant talking cabbage and all this kind of thing. When you become very proprietorial, to use Tom's word about a series, you start to think that you're the only necessary element. And the funny thing is, though, of course, Tom got on really well with Ian.
You can tell as well.
And to this day speaks very movingly about him. And I think that, had Philip Hinchcliffe been a bit smarter about the characters, he could have kept Harry Sullivan on, and I think it would have worked really well, because Harry also was quite progressive, because even though he was meant to be there to be heroic, actually he wasn't.
Definitely,
he was the bumbling idiot who fell over and hurt himself all the time, and I thought that was a lovely, especially at that time, that unreconstructed time in the mid 70s. To have a male character who was the bumbling one and the female character more capable, I thought that was quite a fun thing. Never trusted sliding doors ever since I caught my nose in one in Pompey Barracks, he said to me. Yeah, I loved that. That was Ark in Space. And all this Harry Sullivan is an imbecile in this is brilliant, isn't it?
But they all just, it's the way that they all work together, and I think that's so wonderful. And that's why, like you say, it's a team effort, and that I suppose that is again why I love this season so much, because it just feels like it's a total package. You've got everything there, all working together perfectly to sell this particular idea. So hats off to all of them. I love them dearly.
I want to go back to Christopher Robbie. I just want your take on what was going through his head when he decided to do the cyber leader with a sort of American voice. What
I can imagine
what was
why.
He thinking?
I can imagine why. For the same reason a lot of people think the Daleks have an American voice half the time.
Do they?
If you mention it to non-Doctor Who people, they always say exterminate and do all this weird sort of... that was the thing I hated at school so much. But I can imagine why, because he's thinking big, massive sort of, I'm a huge monster, I'm going to kill you sort of... He's probably a voiceover guy. He's probably just... I think he just thinks that large-than-life, massive sort of character. I think he just went into that level of, this is my voice and I'm going to sell it like this. I'm huge, sort of.
I mean, is he doing an American accent?
He's not, but he's. I don't think he is, but he's.
But he says shaft.
I think he's doing a. I think he's doing a voiceover.
Shaft.
The shaft. That's one thing. I don't want to hear them talking about shafts.
I was thinking of the the cop movie with
Shaft.
Shaft. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't actually think it's a bad performance as Cyber Leader.
I've sort of got used to it.
I quite like it. I think as a kid seeing it, I thought it was quite cool. I thought, he's the one. He's in control. He's in command. Is he not?
One of the things I liked about it as a teenager is that I could do my audio plays and have Cybermen in it, and I had a round plastic light fitting that I could speak into, and it sounded just like a Cyberman. So I did lots of Cybermen stories.
Just doing it like that.
That's amazing, though. It is when you're young, though, to take the time to actually sit and work that out and get it right.
But that's why I liked K9 as well, because I could, work out a way of making a sort of K9 voice with it coming through a tiny little headphone
gap
speaker, and just have a microphone around the corner, and I'd go and do K9 into the
Affirmative, master.
all that,
It does sound. Yeah, I know exactly. I can see exactly where you're coming from.
Goalposts, yeah.
I'll tell you one thing I've got to ask you, because this is a glittering issue for me, is this whole thing about the Cybermen being allergic to gold, their vulnerability to gold.
Well, I mean, Jerry Davis, who wrote the original script, I think he put that in, didn't he? That was in his original storyline.
Perhaps. I mean, I think it's ludicrous.
Yes, it plates their breathing mechanisms and in effect suffocates them. Yeah, the word in effect covers a multitude of sins there, doesn't it? I mean, we were previously told that Cybermen didn't need to breathe, so I just don't know.
I think it's...
But it's got really picked up, didn't it, by JNT? In Silver Nemesis, there's Ace flicking gold coins into their chests.
Oh yeah, and magical stars of excellence, going into being rubbed into them in Earthshock and all that business. But
it's one thing gold being rubbed into the chests in Earthshock and killing them. It's another thing just being pinged with it,
with big sparks.
Yeah. Oh dear, I've just been pinged with something. They became totally allergic to it. It was like, if they saw it, it's like, oh no, take the gold away.
But it becomes a completely pointless thing, because if the Cybermen are such a threat, then you just coat everything important with gold. Exactly. That's all you need to do. Just if you've got a spaceship, oh no, we better stop the Cybermen from invading us. I don't know, let's just line the doors with gold. That'll solve it, won't we? And that's
It's quite expensive though.
Yeah, but you can get cheap gold,
So all the poor people get raided by Cybermen. Yeah, it's a bit... Basically, what they were doing is mimicking the whole thing of the silver bullet killing werewolves, wasn't it? That's what they thought, well, let's not do silver, let's do gold for Cybermen. It wasn't well thought through, that element.
It was a bit of a quick fix, I think. I mean, granted, I love the whole thing about the planet of gold. I think that's lovely, and I can see why it was done. But
the planet of gold.
The planet of gold.
It is good.
What do you think about them shooting out of their heads? Do you think that's fun or?
Well, that's, of course, we all used to look at the old Cybermen and think that that's where their guns should be, and this is the first time where they actually fired weaponry. I mean, I know there's a bit in, is it Moonbase where a thing sort of comes up? Or is it in that badly superimposed curly thing, or is that in the Tomb of the Cybermen? I can't remember.
Not in Tomb.
Okay, well, it's in Moonbase then.
Tomb, they've got the hands where it goes like that. Okay.
So yeah, that noise when it fires,
isn't it? But
a beep pow 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 pow.
But I think that's quite a divide between fans. Some of them love that, but some of them don't like the whole thing.
Imagine having a gun in your head. It must be get quite sort of deafening.
Yeah, I mean, think of the recoil. You'd have a bad neck, wouldn't you? Ouch.
Reminds me of that poor fellow who played Mr. Diagoras in Daleks in Manhattan because he had all those sausage tentacles on the side of his head. But inside, it was quite a few years ago now, so all the servo motors were deafening.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So he said to me, he said, Nick, you've got to say your lines really loudly because all I can hear is the whole time.
Man.
I mean, poor fella, trying to remember his lines, trying to hear my lines, and all we could hear was this ridiculous buzzing noise just vibrating through his skull.
Well, he earned his money, didn't he? That's for sure.
He certainly did.
For sure.
Lovely chap. Yeah.
Lovely chap.
So yeah, it must have been like that for the old Cybermen. I just did a bit of Carrie Brighton music. We talk about his music a lot in our own lives, chatting as friends, don't we? We ought to tell the listeners about the music, Benji.
Well, it's very much in this case. It's very similar to the sort of Carrie Blyton theme, as it were. And obviously, every time is a little bit different. This time we get a bit of organ, which you might not have got before. But a lot of it's trumpet stuff, isn't it? It's quite stripped back. Again, quite stripped back.
Yeah.
And I don't really know why. I suppose it's, again, is he thinking, what are the thoughts behind... Because if I look at his themes before, you've got the Silurians with obviously ancient technology being used. You've got Death to the Daleks. You've got a planet that's dead, a primitive planet. With this, I can't quite see it. I can't quite see what he was going for. His logic there. But I like it. I mean, I think
I really love
it's fun and lonely, and do you know what I mean? It's got a level of stripped back and bare, but I do love it. I do love it.
It's bringing poor old Philip Hinchcliffe, the producer, back into it again. It's clear that he doesn't like it because he got Peter Howell from the Radiophonic Workshop to add extra bits. You know that, don't you?
Yeah. I'm sure. Well,
there are levels simple, basic synthesizer stuff added into this to beef it up, and there were other little eccentric cues that he had removed because he thought they undermined the drama, like when the TARDIS materializes at the end, there's apparently a very sweet little waltz as the Doctor, Sarah and Harry go into the TARDIS, and he just, no, we're not having that.
It's such a shame, though.
Too silly. It's like that chap from Monty Python, goes around, sorry, this sketch is too silly.
Stop it. Too silly. No, it's a shame, and it marks Carrie Blyton's. Is it his last thing that he did for Doctor Who, which is quite sad because I think he had some unique ideas and a unique style in the way that he did things. Granted, I wouldn't want it for every single episode, especially with great stuff like Dudley Simpson's work. But I think that
it's a nice diversion, isn't it?
Yeah, this is just a little bit different, and I like it. And it fits the story actually, which is what I quite like.
Oh, definitely, it gives it a unique atmosphere. It makes the story more special than the actual script is.
Oh, I absolutely. I think if there's one thing that you can say about this is that it's special because it's different, and it's different because it's very atmospheric. It adds something that other Doctor Who stories haven't had before, and I don't think have had since.
I think I had a sort of light bulb moment when you said it's a lot of people standing around and talking a lot of the time. That had never occurred to me, but you're absolutely blinking right, and I feel terrible and hollowed out inside. But you know what I mean, it just you're right, there's a lot of people going, right, now what we've got to do is this, no, let's do this, no, let's go down here, and all, you know what I mean. It's
it is, but it's as long as it's enjoyable standing around talking, it's kind of okay, Well,
I suppose it recalls the Patrick Troughton stories a bit, and I think that in spite of all Robert Holmes's rewrites, it probably still inexplicably retains some of the flavour of the original.
Definitely.
Which I quite like, but possibly in terms of a Hinchcliffe era story is much to its detriment.
I would have liked to have seen this story as a Patrick Troughton story, because I think that would have been something very special.
Well, it would have been in its sort of home environment. Interestingly, of course, this wasn't meant to be the end of the season. Terror of the Zygons was meant to come next, but they decided to hold it over in order to be able to do a season later in the year. I think, I'm not wrong in saying that it had proved so popular. They just thought, crikey, we better hit the... are these the two closest seasons of Doctor Who ever? There was just a few months between them, weren't there?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, give me a second, I'll look to see just how spaced out they were. But a huge hit for them, obviously. Huge hit.
It was very... I mean, Ark in Space got an incredible set of viewing figures, didn't it? I think Tom Baker really captured people's imagination, and they thought, let's not have Terror of the Zygons right in the middle of the summer when no one's going to watch it. Let's move it to autumn, and then, by then they had time to make a few more stories. I wonder how much they were playing catch up. If we had a proper Doctor Who historian here, they'd immediately be able to tell us the answer. And if they're listening to this podcast, they're shaking their fists and go, "Oh, you think you're informed, but you know nothing, you fools! Have you not read my 5-volume epic on Revenge of the Cybermen?"
Which we would read.
I would. Send me a link to it now, folks.
3 months between the seasons, so there's not a big gap at all, is it, really? It's absolutely nothing.
A real bumper year for Doctor Who, and yet I just took it in my stride. I didn't think, we're getting lots more Doctor Who this year. I just thought, that's incredible, isn't it? Just 3 months off, straight back in for a 26-week season.
Yes, I mean, let's see what the viewing figures were for this, if they've got them up. They'll be massive anyway, because...
They're pretty good. They're pretty darn good.
9.5 for part 1, 8.3 for part 2, 8.9 for 3, and 9.4 for 4.
It's pretty good.
Pretty telling, yeah. But I think
it was good for round about that time. I thought you were going to do for not to give us all the figures, but the whole season. It's Ark in Space for some reason peaked, I think.
I suppose I reckon that's an obvious one, because it's like new Doctor comes in, and then there are people then saying that was really good. Another, this new Doctor's
telling
really,
other people
really
about
great,
it,
and then them going,
well,
check. They'll say there's a new story starting soon, and then you can get. You won't have to be confused what's going on.
Yes, that is what they said, because I was recording it.
Yes, so I do remember that it was a Wednesday when I found out. Parked the car in Glenley Avenue and walked round to the house. Yes, that's me. Yeah.
It's good. Well, listen, we're giving it 5 exclamation marks, aren't we?
I'll give it a solid 4. Because I thought this one through already. I'll give it a 4. If you gave it anything less than a 5, I'd be upset. But for the standing around and talking things, and it's not my favourite story, but it's a good story. It gets a 4 from me.
It gets 5 for nostalgia.
Yeah, bang on. Yeah, I think that's
I love it. I loved watching it again, and I could actually sit and watch it again now. And in 2 weeks' time, we're going to do a commentary on episode 1, aren't we?
We are, exactly. So you are going to watch it again. I watched them. Strangely enough, I watched them all on a train this time round for this. Yeah, I watched them to and from London and Brighton and all sorts. So it was a very moving experience.
Literally moving.
But yeah, no, cracking work. So that was Revenge of the Cybermen. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Well, you can let us know what you think of Revenge of the Cybermen by writing to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com, telling us all about it. Yes, well, quite.
Yeah, quite.
And what we'll be doing in the next podcast is indeed reading out some of your emails and having a chat about them. And also we'll be talking about the latest television we've been watching. And the podcast will be titled with whatever top names of TV shows we come up with during that. We'll also, a week late, be announcing the winner of competitions. Sorry about that. It's running a bit late. I've got to sort that out. But the 2 competitions we've got running are to win the Tripods DVD and also win the book published by Coit Media.
A lot of goodies, aren't there? A lot of goodies.
Yeah, what was that called? Spies and...
Playboys, Spies and Private Eyes.
There you go. Good. So there'll be a reminder of those competitions at the end of this podcast. Anyway, in the meantime, let's quickly see if Jamie Anderson's in.
Ooh.
Hello.
Hello, Nick Briggs.
How's your day?
Very good. I just ate 2 buttered crumpets.
That sounds nice.
I don't know why that made me laugh.
It made made me laugh. I was so happy. They were delicious.
Eating them and laughing your head off like a madman.
Yeah, butter flying everywhere.
Jamie, tell us what's going on in the Jerry Anderson podcast at the moment.
What? You want me to push my own podcast?
I do.
Your podcast?
I do, because that's how generous and friendly we are.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. Well, we've just done 3 parts of an interview with my mother.
Oh.
And that's obviously interesting because she's Jerry Anderson's widow also.
Yeah.
In case anybody hadn't worked that out. I'm sure there's somebody who didn't work that out. And yes, she was very candid and gave us some fascinating insights into Dad's life. Some things that even I didn't know about.
Wow. Did she say anything that was difficult for you to hear? I don't mean that she whispered. I mean that, that you found...
She kept wandering to another room.
that was uncomfortable for you to listen to. Because I didn't know that, and I don't know whether I wanted to know that.
Well, I mean, she started to touch on some detail of her early dating life with Dad. Which is obviously... There are areas there that you don't want to know about.
No, yeah, good point.
But no, generally it was really interesting and really fun.
Good.
And actually, I would thoroughly recommend that anyone do that with their parents.
Yes, well, as you know, I've been interviewing my mum about, because they can talk about history, really, and being there during it.
Yeah, and this isn't a slight against my mother, but, talking to somebody repeatedly day to day about their day-to-day lives, about buying biscuits and taking the dogs for a walk, is boring.
Yes.
But once you get an overview of their life and stuff they've done in that format, it suddenly becomes a lot more interesting. So if you think your parents are boring, or somebody elderly in your family is boring, you might actually discover they're quite interesting.
Yeah, it's all a matter of perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, this is getting a bit philosophical, isn't it?
Yes. Have we got a question from Benji? Benji,
we have, yeah. I mean,
okay.
in the spirit of finding things out, and we've got a question for you. If you had a giraffe that you needed to hide, where would you hide it?
Does it have to stay alive while I hide it?
Well, that would be nice.
Yeah, see, it's difficult to find somewhere that's tall enough. There are some nice water towers around here that might work. Or
was that a giraffe I heard there, or was it one of your dogs?
That was my dog.
Okay, I could hear.
The giraffe was carefully hidden. Or I would give it a massive dose of ketamine and then put it in a long building to lower. That is a legitimate... sedative for veterinary use.
Is it?
When you roll your eyes at me.
Yes. I thought you were going to say a legitimate giraffe suppressant.
Well,
Probably
it
is.
is, yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's
good.
That's
So
a very zoologically interesting answer.
Any giraffe experts listening in?
More than happy to help.
Give us any.
Thank you for allowing me to plug
Perfect.
the Jerry Anderson podcast.
You're very welcome.
Pleasure.
Well, Jamie, we'll be talking to you again probably far sooner than you'd wish.
Okay.
Bye.
I'm not looking forward to it. Bye.
Bless him.
Well, there we are. I think that's the end of the podcast.
I think it is. It's that time where we get nice and close to the microphone there.
Don't forget to join us next week for your emails and all the latest TV we've been watching.
TV watching.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye. Pressing stop. Now. I'm resting my nose on the pop shield.
Playboys, Spies and Private Eyes, inspired by ITCs, is an anthology book written by many writers who each explain their love for an ITC action adventure show I should say, and how the show has touched their lives. Shows include The Prisoner, The Saint, The Persuaders, Department S, The Invisible Man, and many more, believe me. The book was published in 2017 and is in aid of Born Free Foundation. The Born Free Foundation Born Free, bing bong bing.
That's not how it goes.
Well, it is now. It is now. But the good thing is you have a chance to win this book. And if you're a cult telly fan like us, then obviously it's something worth entering. So to win a copy of this book, email podcast@nicholasbriggs.com with the following question. With the answer to the following... Don't question it. With the answer to the following question.
Just write in the question.
Just write the question in. Write the answer to this question. Which of the following shows is not an ITC show? Danger Man, The Avengers, The Adventurer, The Champions. I'll read that again. Which of the following shows is not an ITC show? Danger Man, The Avengers, The Adventurer, The Champions.
I love The Champions.
But maybe you're a bit fearful of competitions, maybe you don't know the answer, or maybe you enter and perhaps don't get your hands on the prize. Well, fear not, because anybody that does enter this competition but doesn't win it can have a 50% discount when they buy the book from Coit Media Limited. That's Coit, Quoit. And that's from the website, the Coit Media Limited website. All entrants to this will be emailed an exclusive Benji and Nick Show link, and that helps you to purchase the discount. Simple as that. Closing date is Friday the 17th of May, so it's kind of a win-win situation, really. If you enter,
you'll win something anyway.
You'll be coming out there with some discount, so you'll be better off than somebody that doesn't, quite frankly.
The Tripods competition, to win my Unwanted Tripods DVD box set, because I think it's rubbish. Luckily lots of other people don't, so it's a nice juicy prize. It's both series of the Tripods plus, DVD extras and the soundtrack, proposed soundtrack for a third series that was never made because the BBC came to its senses. What is the name of the cocktail that Benji, Jamie and Nick, Benji's shaking his head, attempted to make in the Dining Experience podcast a few weeks back? Yeah, what's the name of the cocktail? You must remember, there's such a fuss made about it. Answers to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com with the subject line Drinkies.